February has been absolutely dominated by two of this year's most anticipated live service multiplayer video games, Helldivers 2 and Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. And while I'm sure you've heard about the impressive success of the first and the colossal failure of the second, the reality of this tale of two games is actually a little more nuanced than you might expect. You've no doubt seen the less than positive reviews surrounding Suicide Squad from outlets such as IGN, who gave it a 5 out of 10, contributing to its pretty abysmal Metacritic score of 60. But if you take a look at the Steam reviews, you'll find a pretty large contrast. Of course, there are complaints about the characterization and monetization, but it does still have an overall rating of 81%, putting it in the very positive category. On top of the surprisingly optimistic first impressions we shared in our co-op video, my thoughts after playing the whole game are largely the same. Of course, I do have some reservations about the live service elements, which completely failed to keep me playing after the main campaign, but I still enjoyed the story a lot more than I expected to. As someone who isn't really a fan of DC, I didn't go in with any sort of expectations of characters or comic book events. So maybe that's part of why so many were disappointed, but I really wasn't. So on the whole, for me at least, I actually quite enjoyed my time with Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League.
But unfortunately for Rocksteady, enjoyment does not translate into sales. As heard in a recent financial call with the Warner Bros. CFO, the company admits that Suicide Squad has fallen short of their expectations, failing to share any numbers at all, presumably because of how abysmal they are. This disaster is also displayed by the rapid decline in player count on Steam, reaching a new all-time low of just 230 players.
Another game facing issues with its player count is Helldivers 2, but not for the same reason. Where Suicide Squad has disappointed on almost every metric, the sequel to 2015's Helldivers has absolutely blown past every single one of its targets. So much so that its developer Arrowhead had to start telling people to stop buying the game. And since then, the concurrent player count on Steam reached a record of 458,709 players. We tried it out in our first impressions video, and while we did encounter a few issues relating to servers and crashes on PC, the gameplay experience itself was simply incredible, and what we saw of the world building was absurdly entertaining. Helldivers 2 has certainly cemented itself as the biggest breakout hit of 2024, if you're not including Palworld.
And speaking of Nintendo, this month saw the release of Mario vs Donkey Kong. I didn't really hear much about this one before its release, but it's essentially what it says in the box. Critics weren't blown away by it, but they did give it a solid 76 on Metacritic. So if you're looking for some simple Mario fun, but I've already played, or just want something a bit different to Super Mario Bros. Wonder, then this might be for you.
From the moment it was revealed, Skull and Bones seemed like just another destined to fail live service title from Ubisoft. And although, to put it bluntly, we did not enjoy our time with the open beta, it does seem to be finding an audience. Just to be clear, no one is calling it a remarkable life-changing experience, but it is getting some positive reviews. Notably from IGN, who gave it a 7 out of 10, calling it a great foundation. So while it doesn't seem to be anything particularly unique, I think it's safe to say that Skull and Bones is not quite the disaster we thought it would be.
Nightingale is yet another open-world online multiplayer survival game with live service elements. But before you roll your eyes, you might want to give it a look. While there have been complaints about its boring survival mechanics and early access bugs, almost every outlet has praised its gaslamp fantasy world and interesting story. So if you're a fan of the genre and aren't afraid of rough edges, consider giving it a try.
One of the best titles to launch on the Nintendo Wii is finally getting a remake. Epic Mickey was a game I thoroughly enjoyed in 2011, even if it was oddly terrifying, and I was also pretty bad at it due to being so young. But it's still a game that has stuck with me more than any other title on the Wii, and I'm eagerly anticipating this modern interpretation.
While it didn't grab as many headlines as some of the other releases this month, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was definitely the most well received. With a score of 92 on Metacritic, it is now the highest rated title of 2024 so far, beating out games such as the remaster of The Last of Us Part 2. And based on the lack of any particularly heavy-hitting games this year, I do think it will keep that spot for a fairly long time.
Another hugely unexpected reveal that took place this month was the announcement of PC support for the PlayStation VR2. Even as someone who owns one myself and is very much involved in the VR circle, this was something I did not see coming, and might even be a sign of Sony's increasing willingness to support the PC platform. Regardless of what it means, it is certainly a positive development.
The long-awaited Shadow of the Erdtree DLC for 2022's Game of the Year Elden Ring has finally gotten a release date, as well as a very impressive gameplay trailer. Thankfully, this mammoth expansion isn't too far away now, with a release date set for the 20th of June this year.
It's not often that we get something truly original. Everything seems to be a third-person action-adventure game or an open-world RPG. And while Pacific Drive does take some elements from each of those, I find it hard to put it into any particular genre. But even after just playing the opening, I can safely say that they've absolutely nailed both the handling of the car and the atmosphere of the world. And based on the reviews from critics who've played the entire game, the rest of it is just as good.
So what have we got to look forward to next month? Believe it or not, March is actually shaping up to be one of the biggest months of the year, with the remake of Alone in the Dark on the 20th and Princess Peach Showtime, as well as Dragon's Dogma 2 and Rise of the Ronin just a couple of days later on the 22nd. So if you'd like to keep up to date on all of those titles next month, please make sure to consider subscribing as well as leaving a like and a comment.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next month.